and mention a few brands that they've invested in, and then we'll start with. I have a great list of question and answers. We'll have the last 15 minutes for any questions that you have. But if you really desperately feel to interject, please feel free to do so. Okay? So, Gautam.
Thanks, Anand. I'm Gautam. I started investing about 4 years back. I've done 10 investments so far. All my investments have been at somebody was asking that question, at a seed level, which is basically pre-revenue. So the food company that I've invested in is incidentally Hitesh's company, which is called Noodle Play. But that's the only food investment I've done. The balance of them, the others are not in the food space.
Hi, good evening all. Ashish from Bloom Ventures. We have made 2 food investments. One is Mississippi and the other is Pesca Fresh, amongst all the other companies in a primarily tech and tech related fund. Been there for about 4 years into the space and have been investing into startups and angel checks with a follow-up. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Amit Banka from Equity Crest. So food has been in life for a very long time, but I guess from an investment perspective, it's been last 3 years. Where first we invested into Marush, and the other one was one of the failed investments, Rocket Sandwich. Third one was Skywards Cafe, which is essentially a aviation-based themed restaurant based out of Jaipur, but very innovative stuff. And the fourth one, we are innovating something on Indian palate to be launched in December. So this is the journey.
Hi, this is Hitesh. I was earlier with New Silk Route Private Equity, where we invested close to $200 million in the food business, namely Cafe Coffee Day, Adidas, which is also a very large chain in Bangalore for the South Indian cuisine. I moved on and I invested in Marush personally before Unilaser got a larger check, and I exited that. Since then I'm running my F&B venture, and the brand's called Khan's. I've got 1 store and the second store is coming up.
Thanks. So, gentlemen, we in fact, the fact is that we all do it for the sake of food, right? That's our business. All the investments. So, we saw some 5 presentations right now, right? And I was watching all my fellow panelists, right? Do you guys really think that you were impressed by the overall pitches today? What's your sense, Gautam?
Well, on the food space, because maybe that is more relevant to a lot of people here, so I'm not going to comment on the tech, on the tech business. My own learning on food has been that look at not innovating in the food, but look at innovating in how you deliver it. Which is why the dosa thing I was slightly skeptical on, because scaling a innovative food business is not easy. I mean, you look at any brand the last 50-60 years, they have scaled, starting from Subway to KFC to McDonald's. They have scaled because they serve something which is very simple, and I mean, McDonald's is probably the simplest, and that is the key, because you cannot scale something which is very innovative on the palate. That is more for, I think, more for the fine dining kind of, the high-end food business. But if you want to do QSR, scale fast, then don't innovate too much on the dosa or the food as such. Keep that simple and innovate on other aspects.
So one point, I'll take this to Amit. Is that I was not able to connect why this team for this startup, right? So Amit, when you evaluate a business opportunity, right? How do you decide, is this the right team to, let's say, build the next big pizza chain in the country, right? So how do you evaluate that? What is important? And is that fit important, or you think that, food, because we all, love food, anybody can start a food business, What way to see?
Anand, there's no real difference between investment into a food business entrepreneur versus any other, because the passion for food or passion for e-commerce, passion for the product that you're developing is extremely important. So when I say passion, means it comes with very in-depth understanding of the overall product and what he is intending to build. So I think that is extremely important. The other thing is, it's not about identifying a need gap. It's about identifying whether this kind of product would work if presented or delivered well into the system. So, I mean, if you tomorrow start a nice chola bhatura chain, I don't know why it should not work. If you've identified a nice location and it's presented well and it's hygienic and you have a captive footfall over there. So I'm just saying that let's say for example Haldiram. Have they innovated something? I don't know. I mean, yesterday or just few days back, I was at one of the malls in Delhi. I could see the entire food court laid with the best of the brands, but Haldiram was like flooded with people. Why? So I think there are just few takeaways from the entire food industry as a whole in India, and I guess that's ever evolving stuff where we really don't know what exactly is going to work. As long as you are meeting the real requirement of someone, I think that's where it is.
So Ashish, what's your take on team, right? I mean, so in technology businesses, for example, we have a rule like at least 2 co-founders, one person to be a business guy, one to be a tech guy. How do you evaluate a food team?
So the competency to be able to take this to the next level and expand should be very important. If that's the path that the founders have taken. A slight digression but relevant point is that at times what happens is the founders have chosen a business model which need not necessarily fit the interest or palate of the investors who they are presenting to. But if you are taking that path where you want to aggressively grow and you have chosen a startup which has an element of tech into it and some other functional element, having one of the co-founders being competent on both the aspects is of utmost critical nature. Otherwise, you will have to depend on talent which has to be probably brought on board at a later point in time, which not only affects the scalability but also at times ability of people to judge as to whether that can take on to the next level, because you will always find it that much more difficult to have the best possible talent as an employee at the very early stage as compared to a co-founder.
Got it. So I think Hitesh had some points about Hitesh. What do you think about are you really happy the way entrepreneurs are thinking about the right businesses to pick? You think there is a mismatch between the skills of the team and the requirement of the business?
Actually, I think this industry is fairly new from an expansion point of view. Earlier, all the mom and pop shops existed. So if you break up the industry, you've got ballpark $48 billion of industry, of which 15 billion is organized. Again, all the MNCs are enjoying that market share. Today, lots of promoters are thinking about building a chain but don't understand the ground realities. And Rohan, I think, highlighted very, very succinctly as to what's really to be done, and changing business model could be the need of the hour. I see while I'm building this, there's a massive shortage of talent. There's a massive shortage of understanding business model by the team per se. So I think even the investments I've looked at from an angel or a personal capacity point of view, people are not assessing categories correctly. If they are assessing categories correctly, they are not assessing revenues from that categories correctly. So if the revenues do not come, then the rent tends to take over. So there's this Cafe Coffee Day started after Barista, and yet overtook Barista because of doing certain things right. So there's lots which is there, but people, I believe there's just paucity of right talent to assess this correctly. But on the other side, there's a massive opportunity which is lying. I hope that I answered.
Great, thanks. So all of you make early stage investments, right? You might have made a slightly more mature investment also in Marush, for example, the old brand, right? So for a new Indian brand, what is the kind of proof of concept that you would like to see before you get in? Even whatever size of check, right? And also what do you think is appropriate size of check for the first outside fundraise for a food startup?
Okay, so I'm slightly anomaly here because I only invest in companies at an idea stage. So it doesn't matter what I invest in. I will not invest if, quote unquote, they've already done a proof of concept. I enjoy participating in the proof of concept. So I'm not too sure if I can answer. My answer may be not that relevant. Just want to add to what Hitesh was saying. I think if you look at the food business, and this I have learned myself in the last about 18-20 months since I invested in Hitesh's company. It looks very easy to do from the outside. You rarely get to meet somebody who says that he doesn't understand food. I think that's the biggest problem with this business. Just because we eat, we think we know this business, right? Like for example, you would not attempt a tech business because
you're not a tech person, right? So, but you think you can do a food business because you eat it, right? And most people, I'm not saying you need to be a chef to get into this business. But please understand that this is a tough business. And just because you eat food or because quote unquote you're a foodie, right? You go out and go to a pub, doesn't qualify you to run this business, right? So that's one. And second, do not get into this business if you don't love it, because it's capital intensive, it takes money, and if you're not able to raise funds, it is very disappointing. So you have to have a 36-month to 40-month window. That's a long time, 3 to 4 years. You may raise money, you may not raise money, but it's not easy to raise money in this business. Let me tell you that. It's very difficult because there are many options, right? Unlike other businesses, everybody wants to do a food business. So unless you really love it and you're like really, you have something within you which says, you know what, I'm going to do something in this food business beyond because I'm just a foodie and I enjoy having tandoori chicken every evening. Then only get into it. Otherwise, it's a tough business and it's not that easy to pull through. I'm not trying to discourage you, but I'm just giving you.
I agree with that. Very very important point. And I've seen Poonam here from Rocket Sandwiches. My friend Jaideep from Fasos. In fact, Jaideep once broke his back because every day he would spend 6 hours on the road in Bombay. And the amount of potholes you have in Bombay, it was crazy. And once his car broke down. So for 2 days he was in autos and taxis. And after the third day he was in the hospital for a month because back broke down. And this is literally back breaking. And Hitesh used this word about 1,000 days. Hitesh, it takes that much. So I'll come back to my previous question, right? Ashish and Amit both. Ashish, what do you think is a good amount of proof of concept, right? And ideally, frankly, the proof of concept should also be important for the entrepreneur, whether they want to continue further or not, right? It's not about, sometimes somebody might give you 50 lakh rupees or a crore rupees, but you might waste a lot of your own time just using that money, but you still may be on the wrong path, right? So what do you think is a good proof of concept?
So at a stage at which we have looked at investments, it has been important for us to understand that with the capital that the founder is seeking at that point in time from us, how will he be able to reach that stage when he can raise a 30 to 36 month capital and sustain on that? Because to be able to not have a window of about 2.5 years after the initial work. So the reason I'm talking about is because we have made seed investments. At that point in time, businesses would not be expected to be established or brands would not be created. Else we would not be having those, we don't have that mandate, we don't go for those bets. But at that point in time when we are taking that bet, it is important to understand if he is expecting to give him about 1.5 crore, where does that 1.5 crore take him? Is he going to be in a position to be able to raise the next round at a certain threshold which will last him the next rollout of 2.5 years? To be at a position where he will be able to then demonstrate the proof of concept. So for us, the investment goes into building out that proof of concept. Mm-hmm. That having said, it's not about a plain vanilla idea on the paper.
Got it. So what more do you want from over and above paper idea? So
at that point in time, the clarity about the product and the target consumer, it's okay. So giving the sandwich example which we just saw, it's perfectly fine that you want to serve a muesli or have a sandwich or maybe serve fish.
but who is your target customer and what is the need that you're satisfying has to be taken care of. At times, while every food product can be consumed at different parts of the day, but what is the need you're fulfilling? How are you going to reach that critical initial set of reach to those potential consumers? Because it's very important when you're going to be there in the market raising $3, $4, $5 million checks. The investors are going to ask how many stores, what is the sales quantum at each store, and being able to sell at one store a huge quantum may not be a great proof of concept. So at our level, having clarity on those ideas.
Do you like fund a 2-year plan or a 1-year plan, 18-month plan? What would be like, the plan that you would fund? How long?
So at the point at which we have cut those checks, we have funded both the plans which were over about 12 months. Both were about a year and a half roughly. And it has taken a little more time to both the companies to come to that stage, and you should be in a position to take care of those.
Got it. Amit, again, if you can be slightly more. Please, same question, yeah.
So I think for me it's extremely clear that first store, product working, and you reach break even in a prescribed time frame. That's the proof of concept. And then if you are planning to go multiple stores, then the second store, and you have created a proper standardization and the processes and SOPs in a proper manner. So with these two things, I mean, the POC is done.
Yeah, so I think I'll just seek some more details from the panel. I'll just to give an example of what we did at Fasos. Fasos was a 5-year-old chain running in franchisee mode when Jaideep came back from London and wanted to start it again. We raised around 2.5 crore rupees total debt and equity in the company, and we planned to do around 10 locations. But by the time we'd done 7 locations, we were already able to raise another next round of funding. Right? The round of funding was rather large, but not like $7 million, not $5 million. Smaller than that, but large round. We were a little lucky. Today, what I'm seeing is most of the food businesses are taking longer, like at least 2 years from the first fundraise, because when you raise some money, after that the onus is on you to prove a few things like Amit pointed out. So Amit, you invested in Marush, right? So what was the thinking? It's an old brand, right? So did you invest like for the next 5 years? Did you invest for the next 2 years?
Yeah, I guess in our case it was a little different because they were already running around 9 to 10 stores, the combination of FOFO and FOCO. And I think so I guess for Marush it was until break even, so I guess it was not 2 or 5, it was for perpetuity.
Great, got it.
Because it had already a very established.
So you were saying that they were already breaking even and they'll remain profitable henceforward.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. So gentlemen, anybody who's not able to hear in the back is welcome to come. Please come here, sir. Please come here. We have a few good seats here. Yeah, I have next 2 hours I'm going to talk, so can't do it any louder. Please come forward. Please come here, sir. Please come. First. Yeah, we have some more seats, please. So, changing the topic around, everybody when we think in terms of, we only think in terms of QSR, right? So, Hitesh, what do you think? I mean, it's like our dear friend, the ponytail, would say, dare to think beyond IIMs, right? So how do we dare to think beyond QSRs?
You give me a tough question, but I'll attempt. So actually, I think of it this way, that location, execution and standardization makes success in a QSR. And all these 3 things can't happen in 3 years or 5 years. The best of the names in the brands, in the QSR brands took 20 years. And they had everything ready in that sense. They were global brands and they've proven themselves in various countries. So in QSR, like even I think Gaurav said, that it's going to be a while, and if you move beyond it, digital is becoming life. So you can look at online as a play to do food. Now there are various models one can toy with. Recently, Domino's tied up with Tasty Khana on this sort of coding press, where they are moving very, very heavy on web and online. to deliver the same pizza. So that's a very interesting model which will emerge, and you can look at cutting your real estate cost by opening in not the prime locations. So that's one way of looking at the business. There is a model around the whole food delivery which could be emerged. You don't have to necessarily supply food. You could be a logistics play, which could be just ensuring delivery. Today, apart from the large chains, be it Domino's, fast food, there isn't a source available for you to deliver. If you consider some of the QSR brands like Marush, Khan's, what I'm running, 60 to 70% business is delivery. How do you go about creating that? There's a full logistics play available. So these are two ideas which I could probably think of on that.
Amit, you have some interesting example of a different play, right?
So I guess frozen food, ready to eat, maybe a little bit more focused on deliveries. I think that's where the real next level of growth.
Why don't we talk about non-consumer businesses in
So
food?
I guess,
Right?
yeah.
They're not sexy enough, or are they good for
there's
investors?
good amount of work, innovation, infrastructure required to get into those. Food technology plays a very important role. Distribution plays a very important role. Creating a brand, if you are going to consumers like an FMCG, plays a very important role. So I guess launching a store for everyone seems easiest, but if you have to work backwards and see how that food is created. So let's say, for example, company like Baker's Circle. I don't know how many of you really know this particular company, but they're doing interesting stuff in creating frozen doughs for whether it is baguettes to croissants and stuff like that. And I think, and even frozen desserts. Amazing amount of traction that we've got on that particular company. Then there's good amount of stuff happening on sandwich fillings and toppings and stuff like that. Again, going into a lot of QSR stuff. So it is about, when we were talking about standardization, not necessarily you have to work on standardization yourself. You have people to do it for you, because you can't establish a lab, you can't put up a factory together. So like a Vistas or a McCann or all these people, the amount of work that is going on in food space outside of store is immense, and I think that's an opportunity.
So Ashish, sorry, Gadav, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah, please.
just answer this. Is a very interesting
Question. I think dare to think beyond QSR. Is
Restaurants. They are to think beyond
Yeah,
restaurants.
dare to think beyond restaurants. Just one thought, and then sorry to
Sure.
think of why somebody wants to open an outlet on a road. It's because you believe that people can't discover you unless you are in their face. That's it, right? I mean, you want to be in a mall or you want to be in a high street because you believe that people will not come to you, people will not know about you if they're not walking right in front of your restaurant. I think that is the biggest mindset that you need to break if you want to dare to think beyond restaurants or QSR. And let me tell you, it's not necessary to have your brand in somebody's face. Because in my opinion, if you need to have your brand in somebody's face, then you don't know how to build a brand. And if you are confident on your ability to build a brand, then you will build a brand. That's all there is, right? And for that, you don't need to be on Marine Drive or Carter Road or any of the other so-called high street places to have people eat from you.
So I think I'm glad you interrupted. So I think Ashish, you have made a very bold investment in Mississippi, right, which is a food brand. So and there are plenty, right? I mean, if you really go around saying, what are the snack brand, there are like so many of them. If you go to any superstore today, you find 20 snacks brands today. So what was the thought behind picking Jaideep and picking Mississippi, and what are the key trends that they're playing in?
So, from a pure capital intensive nature of the business and our ability to keep on following on, there was going to be a limitation on funding a QSR. And of course, there are a lot of great ideas about it, but we somehow were not, we didn't feel that we were greatly competent to be evaluating some of those opportunities. Not that I would take credit for evaluating Mississippi in a great way. We have to still prove a point. But somewhere also the thought and the belief was that when there is a certain store and a shelf space, it's something that can be utilized, and we can create a sustainable brand based out of India, utilizing that space rather than create a store to have many more outlets on food items. So if you do a great amount of research, you will discover much more. But a very elementary research does tell us that a price point which a Mississippi today is in the market, it is a little higher than most Indian brands, but being able to have much more qualities in terms of both taste and hygiene factors, and priced attractively enough to be on the lower threshold as compared to some of the foreign imported brands. But having indigenous brands is something which is an opportunity. Distributing network, being in a category not necessarily very heavily innovative, but today the distributors and the suppliers also want some brands which can give a bang for the buck and compete with the heaviest sellers. That's something that they can use innovatively to push margins on those products. So we have, and that is something which is happening. If you can go out to a store and get them to get a higher margin and move into a space of the quality product which competes in existing great brand, he is definitely interested in taking this to the next level and nudge the foreign brands to move a little more.
So I'm going to ask a few questions around some structuring mistakes like some founders do with their companies. So Amit, how do you view a company which has a sleeping partner owning maybe 80% of the equity and somebody owning 20% managing the company? How do you view something like that?
Just pass on the opportunity.
Just pass straight away. So what do you think, Ashish? How would you view that?
No, I don't have a different answer.
Right. Gautam?
No, wouldn't touch it.
Wouldn't touch it, right? So I think that's
The guy in the driver's seat should be in a position to drive it in all forms.
And I'm just bringing out one point. It's important for the audience to do their research on the web. And any of these structures are total no-no for most institutional investors. You might get lucky with one or two people in terms of they will be interested to talk to you, but most investors will simply pass straight away. Right?
Just like to add over there, it's not about who's investing into you and this is his model of investing. It's about what makes sense. So what will create more value for the company? So if it creates more value for the company, it will create value for all its stakeholders. So point is, it's not about what I would feel or someone else. It's not good for the entrepreneur. It's not good for the company that there's someone who's actually passionate about the business and driving it still owns only 20% at the early stage. If you own 20% after 10 years, really no one cares because you've already built it to that particular level. So I think that's one critical aspect.
So I'm going to ask a question about valuations, and I'm going to forcibly make all of you answer this. So if a company which has started, let's say, so we had a few people presenting today, like all five of them, very early. Some have built something, some have not built something. What would be the ballpark range, of valuations you think they'll get funded at, and what would the ballpark good amount for them to raise? Okay, each one has to answer. You can agree with somebody else, but he just has to start.
Not specific to the pitches today, but so you can work backward as a formula. You can see what the trading multiples are for the best in the business companies.
What are these?
So 8x sales is what you could use for a Domino's, which hasn't
8x
changed.
sales, yeah, for Domino's.
Now again, that's taken 20 years, so that's best in the
8x
business.
sales
And
is
then
for like a very highly profitable.
20 years, highly profitable, 2,000 crore company, right? A top line company. So you work backwards and then you assess yourself, look in the mirror, and realistically see what should be the number you should what should be the number you should dilute at, and then you decide what is the dilution you want in this round, and then that gives you the answer how much money to raise. So, for example, if you were to play it, let's say a company is barely started, has a few lakhs of business a month, you could decide raise 50 lakhs, 75 lakhs, or probably look at as a raise which could last you for 2 years, and raise it at the. I don't think first 3 years of a business you should try and tom that you want the maximum value. First 3 years of the business you should build a business. I think.
Ritesh, are you saying that 50 lakh to 1 crore is a decent fundraise to begin with?
It should be I think more important than fundraise. the business plan should be clearly articulating where will you spend that money, which usually should be, you should assume 10% for mistakes you would make or models which could go wrong. So where should you be evaluating? So 1 crore is a realistic number for a startup to consider while you are building the business.
So Gautam, and I'm sure that I'll get a clearer answer from you. So Gautam, what's the amount typical, right? I mean, and you can use data from your own experience, from other people's experience, and how much dilution to get the first check?
Great, that's a great question, and very relevant, I'm sure, for a lot of you. So remember, this is my learning in the last 3.5, 4 years. If you're raising money from angels, and this is a consortium of angels, the amount which a human being who doesn't know you from before, okay, let me qualify, he does not know you from before, the amount he will write as a first check is 10 lakhs. You can raise from a single person 10 lakhs. So if you want to raise 50 lakhs, which is a good number, then you need about 5 people. And that's the rule of thumb. There could be a person who might do 20 lakhs, but that is rare. Because I'm talking about at a seed stage, because that's the stage I'm familiar with. Okay, so keep that as a rule of thumb. 50 lakhs, I think, is a good amount. Could be 40, could be 30, in that range, right? If you get 30, just finish it off. Don't wait for that, because time is very important when you start. But if you want to, as you raise the amount that you want, right? Remember, it's inversely proportional to time. Sorry, directly proportional to time. Because longer, so you want to raise 1 crore, is going to take you that 6 months, right? Because then you need about 8 people with about 10 lakhs in that range, right? So that's one feedback. 10 lakhs is what a person would typically write you who doesn't know you from before, right? In a seed business. On the dilution aspect, remember you calculate on, you need 4 rounds of funding, right? So you have a seed, then A, B, C, you might have a D in some cases. Of course, Flipkart is an exception. But typically you would calculate for about 4 rounds of funding and 20% dilution at each round. Right, so give or take, you should be left with about 20 to 30% of your company at the end of 4 rounds of funding, and that should be okay. If you're less than 20%, then slightly tough. If you're more than 30%, then great. But if you're in that range, I think you should be fine. So that's the way to just work. Just work backwards and just make sure that you have in that range after about 4 rounds of fundraise, and that dilution should work for you. Otherwise, valuation at a seed stage there's no science to it, because anything multiplied by 0 is always going to be 0. Right, so just.
Ashish, you have data from lots of Indian Angel Network deals, Mumbai Angel deals. What do you see in the market that typically for a 50 lakh to 1 crore fundraise, maybe up to even 2 crore rupees for an angel fundraise, what is the amount of dilution that is happening?
So we have seen this across a wide spectrum, but to just take a bulk of them and put into some kind of a range, the dilution would be in that 50 lakh to 2 crore at the minimum would be no less than about 10-12%. On a higher, it has gone even as high as 25% as well. So we sometimes find it very, very jarring, but at that stage at which we are raising the money, it's about dilution and not about valuation. I know somebody can stand up and say, how are the two delinked? What I mean to communicate and what I want to emphasize is that there is no way we can justify to somebody how I valued an opportunity at 6 crore, or how you are believing that you should be getting a valuation of 10 crore. Playing by that logic that he just explained, could be dilution percentages at each round could be little different. Could be somebody in the A round would have a stake target of 30%, 35%, with a larger VC coming in and putting in $4-5 million. But at that point in time, it's only again about dilution. So working backwards or forward, a 1 to 2 million kind of a range as a valuation threshold at an angel stage is a good thumb rule to start with. Some premium for a great team which is truly having the great exposure and ability to take it to the next level, to a premium for building the round size. Sometimes we don't understand that we don't want to dilute too much, and therefore we'll choose to raise a little less than what we need. That's not a mistake worth making.
giving away a little percentage point or a couple of percentage point extra for getting the right amount of quantum of raise would do you good stead to last the business over the next 18 months and worthwhile, but don't compromise on the raise if you feel that you're falling short consciously.
So one last comment from Amit on how do you see the environment for fundraising for food in general? What is the level of interest you see in angels today?
Very difficult question. I actually see that there's an investor for every good model, and as Gautam was saying, that it has to start at a very lower level. So it normally gets funded between friends, family, and people who you are acquainted with, and they are the best angels to you. So I guess if it's a question of 10 to 50 lakh rupees within that kind of range, I think before someone reaches angel, they reach their friends and family, and I guess that gets funded over there. But I think from a food perspective, unless and until an entrepreneur has enough funding to reach break even on its first store, I guess we should not start or get into the business. So I guess that is an important one. For the second store, he can't start with 10 lakhs. So I guess that's a key issue that you face. For the first store, if he's raising capital, I don't think.
So do you see a lot of plans floating around in the food space and not getting funded, or do you?
So you've seen just 4 right now, and I'm sure I would have screened another 20.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. So guys, yeah. So sorry. Just don't ask specific questions about your company. Make it generic.
Yeah. Since we are discussing on valuation, I just want to understand, basically, we have 2 types of restaurants or QSR. One is, with one outlet, and another is with 3-4 outlets and running it with 4-5 years. So 2 things I want to ask. One is, how do you see margins of restaurants? Basically, the margin is going down year after year. That is what we have observed. So what is your criteria in terms of margin? And secondly, these 2 types, generally, what is the valuation parameters you use?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if the margins are going down, it's very tough to value it at anything, right? So you need to have a clear plan on how the margins will go up again, right? So there is a certain level of margins that you'd like to see in any business, right? But broadly, after corporate overheads, everything, profit before tax or something like 20% is essential in the long run. So if it is less than that, it's a tough business to be.
Yeah, suppose it's 20%, then what is the criteria?
So I think there is broadly the multiple typically used is what Hitesh was mentioning, like the multiple of revenues. So somewhere, I mean, if Domino's at like super large brand is at 8 times of revenues, typically you should expect between 3 to 5 times of revenues. And when you raise money, you might actually be negotiating at a valuation even less than 3 times of revenues.
So that's a function of 2 things: the stage at which you are and the quantum you are raising as well, right? So if you are at a point where you are doing certain business which is demonstrating a pattern or a trend and stability of revenue, you would definitely apply those multiples. If your question is from the perspective of a company which is currently at a kind of a semi-scratch kind of a level, then the parameters of multiples might not necessarily apply. Then you will go by the rule of thumb which we mentioned.
Okay.
Okay, yes. Sorry, you already had a chance already. Yeah, please correct. You can just
stand up and speak, yeah?
Okay, so for a technology company, an exit period would be about on an average 5 years. For a food enterprise, and I'm talking about a chain of outlets, let's say, an Indian chain of restaurants. What is the kind of exit period which is expected by the investors?
Again, there are different exit periods for different investors. What I mean by that is a seed investor, typically the rule of thumb is 3 to 5 years, because that's what the investors who have taken the money from, which is called LPs, have a 10-year commitment. So they like to churn their investment every 3 to 5 years. But again, it will be very different. There are some investors who are happy to hold on for 8 years. There are some who are not having patience to hold on
beyond 3 to 5 years. So it's not a generic answer.
Yeah, but I mean, broadly it'll take around 10 years to reach IPO. Definitely not before that. It's very difficult to expand more rapidly in food. And within that, your initial investors might have sold to incoming new investors after 5 years. That's what you're saying. But the time to IPO is rather large. And even to exit or sell to a foreign company, even there it will be 7-8 years. It's very difficult to. We've not really seen anything.
Yeah, not many success stories there. But if you take an example of specialty food, that's been probably a 15 to 20 years story. Strategy getting listed. And I mean, there are no other successful Indian startups as well. But 5 years, don't you think that's a very short period of time for an exit? Especially in a food business. I mean, if it's a technology enterprise, I think it's justified.
So if you talk about exit for the investor, it's very different from exit for the overall business. At that point, you have to distinguish between what is the kind of investor you're approaching. If you're approaching a fund which has got a 8-year or a 10-year tenure, it's T-2 work backwards and the clock starts the day you are working out. So while you might not obsess about that, my exit has to come by way of an IPO and you have to go and list or you have to make a great exit to a larger player. But for him to be able to get an exit over the 5-year horizon or a 6-year or a 7-year horizon becomes imperative. Some other investors might have a longer horizon at an individual level or doing out of corporate balance sheets. So whose threshold, whose exit you are defining is important here. For a business to mature and be at a level of making it IPO-able and sustainable with consistent margins and trends, I agree with you, it takes a lot more time than a tech business. But whom you're taking the money is also going to determine some of the things, if not all, and that's something you should be careful.
That's another reason why a lot of VCs and PE funds are entering the business after 5 years, right? So let's say your 5-year-old business mature, like they entered in Marush, right? This is a mature business, right? Or for that matter, Sequoia entered in Pasos. It looks like Pasos is an overnight success, but it was around for quite a few years before it got funded, right?
So, I mean, I don't know how to interpret this, but are there investors who are likely to invest in a Series A, Series B rather than probably at a seed level, because that's much more waiting for an exit?
Yeah, people will enter. Very difficult to get people interested at seed or angels. Angels might be institutional investors like Bloom or Unilever or India Quotient will be that much more reluctant about getting into food. Will do here and there, but we are also looking at rather fast-moving models, which are different kind of models we talk about. QSR restaurant businesses are tougher, longer to scale, and we are reluctant there. Am I right?
Yeah, that's partly also a function of how much can we see through the company sustaining and keeping it on. At the end of the day, you as an investor would not want to cut a check by at that point in time getting a great deal from the founder, he believes in you, and then have to wait much longer and give a bridge check. Investor should have the ability to sustain for a certain period of time and then move it to the next level.
Okay.
Next question.
When you talked about Sequoia and IPO, just wanted to, in a QSR business, do you really think Sequoia will exit after Pasos?
Sequoia is coming next 1 hour.
We have VC from Sequoia coming over here.
But do you really believe that Indian markets have really matured that QSR can IPO?
Too big and too good for me to answer for them here. We'll just have that.
Anyone on the
see, it's not about IPO, right? It's about ultimately investors don't get in saying I will invest only because of an IPO. Right? And I don't think that we can say that I want to see an exit, but I don't think we really, all of us, worry too much about exit as investors. We want to see value creation. We want to see a profitable, well-known brand which will last for 100 years. So if a brand is going to last for 100 years, I didn't invest in Pasos personally, for example, to get out in 5 years, right? Maybe I'll get out, but when I see the life of the company, I have to see that this is a 100-year-old brand. Right? Domino's has been around for like donkey's years now, right? Or McDonald's. These are like 50-year-old brands. So if that's the way I have to see, I may get out whenever an opportunity or a need for money. That's separate. My need to exit is dealing from what I see as the future of the company.
But whatever investors we talk to, they always talk about what will be our exit.
So let me just clarify two things. Remember, investors are coming in and going out. It's a trade. Okay, so when you say exit, that's a wrong question. Exit for whom?
Yeah.
So please qualify the question. That's step one. Step two is that, remember, if you want people to be invested in your company, doesn't matter who it is, angels, even your own father, it is, you have to show hyper growth, right? It is like owning an asset, right? If I own an asset on Gurgaon 10 years back when Gurgaon was getting built, I'm not going to sell it. Today I will, right? So that's it. So people want to exit also because they believe that you don't have the capacity for hyper growth, right? Who wants to exit Flipkart, right? So just look at that as an example. If you are growing, and I'm saying hyper growth is not growing twice a year. That's AP growth. I'm talking about GP growth, right? If you're growing 6-7 times in a year. Now, if you're growing at that kind of a rate, then nobody wants to exit anyway, right? So remember, people's need for exit is dependent on two things. One is it's a train and where they have come in and where they have to get off. So there is no exit overall, it's exit for different people. And second is that if you are growing, if you have figured that secret sauce, people want to stay invested because you're an asset which is increasing in value, right? If you're an asset increasing in value, nobody wants to come out, right? So that's the two things from my end.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
What do you look for in an investor? I mean, sorry, in an entrepreneur. What is the drive, his background? I mean, what are you looking for the perfect entrepreneur?
So, first of all, there's nothing like perfect, and we are no experts to always pick out gems. Two important things that matter to us is the business that the promoter is or founder is looking to step into and seek our money for. His ability to take it to the next level and ability to have talent around him. At the early stage, a good test is ability of a founder to get a co-founder. Not all businesses have two equal founders. In fact, in a large number of businesses, the two founders are not equal. So somebody has got the other one excited, or both of them could have walked the same path. That ability to take it to the next level, work together as a team, and scope out that particular market are the three things that are important. Market is not the function of the entrepreneur. The other two are.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm still not very clear. So in terms of factors, what's the factors A, B, C, that importance for what you're looking for when you're investing in the QSR?
Why do you want to have factors, right? I mean, if this is not, I mean, even when you buy a stock in a public market, right, you still don't have factors like, it's, if otherwise I would have coded something, right?
I mean, understand what you're looking at. Look at A is important, B as.
So I think, yeah, that's okay. I see what you're saying. So for me, and I like Amit and Hitesh also to answer this. For me, it is team. Right. Most important is team. Second most important is the market. How big is the market? For example, I was reluctant. There's a very popular QSR today, which started as a Mexican food restaurant, and I was very reluctant. I didn't think there's a big enough market for Mexican food in India. And the third important thing is the current product or your current business model. I would pay less importance to the current business model because that can evolve. You can't change the market. It's very difficult for a small player to make the market big. Team is the most important. Typically, for example,
operating profits.
No, not important. Not important. I mean, if a good team in a good market will figure out all of those things in the beginning. So,
yeah, I guess good team and the product is the most critical thing. Rest everything follows.
I mean, these are absolutely the same points because that's really a company, right? A company is a team, the product, and the vision. But you have to be able to execute it day on day basis, add more scale / add more talent as you're scaling up. I think these are important dynamics an investor looks at. If you're going to add, let's say, 10 stores, you'll need 3 area managers. If you're going to add 10 cities, you'll need 10 city managers. Scale is not going to happen if you can't hire talent.
Operating profit is not a metric.
Operating profit is a function of the business model. So if you are in a category, there are so many categories in business. So if it's a category like, let's say Chinese, the food cost is generally lower than Indian cuisine. So technically, you will see a different operating profit in both these cuisines. So that's a very different dynamic. Generally, businesses are done to make money. So you would want to be in the 15% to 25% EBITDA range. If that's the.
So I guess from an operating profit perspective, it's important to understand what's your upfront investment in creating a backend, and then at the store level, what kind of profits are you making? So if these two matrices are different, I think that's how probably the evaluation will take place.
So you're saying
because
that
your backend could be for actually 3 stores, but you have to actually create it for the first store as well. But your scale would only come when second and the third and the fourth store.
So you're saying if it is capital efficient, it's okay if you slightly slower operating margins.
Absolutely. But over a period of 1 year, I should see that. Progression.
So I think we should do this workshop on understanding the business models and financial models in food, right? So I'll request Ty to organize that soon. Yes, yes, please.
How do you see the evolution of food playing an important part, as far as investors' perspective is concerned? When I say evolution of food is typically in India, okay, and I'm talking precisely by QSR and CDR's format. We saw, we are a heritage for food specialization is concerned. We got tandoor and typical variety of cuisines in India. Then we saw Chinese coming in, then we saw Italian flooding in, then we saw pizzas and the pastas of the world, the burgers got by McDonald's. Then I think the hottest thing would be Mexican or Thai. So how do you see the evolution? And I also want you to comment a bit on healthy food, because I run it. I run a healthy fast food company. So I want to understand how this evolution, how the investors look at this evolution of food is concerned.
Okay, I'm going to give you a very different take, and I don't think you'll like what I'm going to say. I don't think the Indian consumer is innovative on food. Okay, I think I'm talking about the mass. If you want to make a mass brand, you want to be a niche brand, then it's different. I think we want, yes, and I agree with Anna. I think the Mexican and all is fine, but is it going to become a 100 crore company? I'm not too sure. Right, so I think the chola bhatura, the dosa, but not the peri-peri sauce, just the good dosa, right? Even the samosa, the chaat, things which we eat, but delivered in a much better way. That's what I think, okay, and I could be hopelessly off the mark. So I think the evolution of food or evolution of QSR or whatever word you want to use is going to be food that we are all familiar with, but just served in a much better way.
No, I'll just add something over here. Just one simple theory in India is foreign food in India is fat. It will just quickly rise and then go down. And I think it's seen across all the chains that have started. And I think that's going to be a continuing trend, because we are ultimately Indians. We have our own tastes. And across the country, you have around 25, 26 areas where you'll have a completely different.
But the biggies still remain McDonald's and Domino's, which is again a foreign food.
They taste like Indian food.
Domino's is Indian.
They taste like Indian food. The point that Gautam and Amit are trying to make is that the food should be about consumers' taste. It's not be about your taste, right? You can always eat very healthy food and lead a very healthy lifestyle and serve pakoras and samosas to your customers, which is perfectly okay. Right? People will eat what they want to eat, right? You can make people health conscious, but ultimately, they'll remain a very small market. You'll have to wait till it becomes big. So, sir, you had a question.
Yeah, from an investor perspective, what went wrong with Rocket?
What went wrong with Rocket?
From
so I think same point, right?
Since you've invested
same
in
point.
it, you failed.
So yeah,
So I think it was the team, according to me.
Last question. Okay. What weightage do you give when there is a possibility of integration, either backward or forward, when evaluating an investment?
The point is that sometimes some of these backward integration, forward integrations are one, very expensive, two, sometimes difficult for the same team to manage, right? So I think I wouldn't really attach a lot of value today, right, to anything beyond which exists, right? So you can always say, I have low margins today, but if I buy a flour factory, I'll become more profitable. Right? That doesn't work. So I think that's okay. But today, whatever you're doing, you need to do it very well, and you need to be able to scale in that business. That's the more important part. So, okay, just last one question, only because you're waving your hand very fast.
Please get up and ask a question.
My name is Raghav, and I have a question to the second gentleman. I'm sorry.
Gautam.
Now, you said a very realistic figure of 10 lakh rupee. Anybody who would not know me, based on my case study and everything, would offer me in the first go. It's a very, very realistic figure which you said. Now, if suppose I want to raise some fund for my company, my question to you is that would an investor prefer hyper projection vis-a-vis realistic execution जो मैं आपसे बोलूँगा? For example, 10 लाख रुपए जैसे मैंने आपने देखा कुछ ने 1 करोड़ मांगा, कुछ ने 2.5 करोड़, कुछ ने 10 करोड़. So my question to you is, as a realistic promoter of my brand, would you, as an investor, I repeat, prefer me just projecting extraordinarily, which I actually will not do because मुझे मालूम है मैं execute नहीं कर पाऊँगा, versus realistic execution जो मैं आपसे बोलूँगा नहीं ये मैं करूँगा और इतना मुनाफा लूँगा, लेकिन 100 रुपए का मुनाफा नहीं आएगा, 10 का मुनाफा आएगा, वो foot नहीं होगा, you know, your investment will not go foot. Now this is what I would want to know from you.
Okay, so let me. You're asking for my opinion, right? I can't answer for. Yeah, correct. So I'll tell you how I do it when I write these 10 lakh checks. Correct. So there are two things. One is when I write a 10 lakh check or 20 lakh check, I only look at what you will do with that money. In fact, I don't want a hyper projection because you're not going to get there, right? Not with 20 lakhs, right? Or 10 lakhs. So that's hopefully answering your first question. Second question is, remember, when you're raising 10, 20, 30 lakhs, I think what a lot of people miss is that what is the type of person you're speaking with. Now, there are two kinds of people who invest that kind of an amount. There are people who are looking for dividends. Dividends means कि boss, मैंने आपको 10 लाख रुपए दिया, मैं ये फिक्स डिपॉजिट में डालता तो मेरे को 10% मिलता, ठीक है ना? अब आप मेरे को कितना दोगे? इसके ऊपर 15% दोगे, 20% दोगे every year, right? Those are what are called cash flow investors. राइट ये इंडिया में पिछले 7 साल से चला आ रहा है, ये कोई नई बात मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूँ. लोग जो पहले इन्वेस्ट करते थे ऐसे ही करते थे, मैं आपको 20 लाख रुपए दूंगा, मेरे को कितना देगा? 10% मेरे को बैंक देता, आप कितना दोगे? राइट. सो दैट्स वन काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टर. दोज आर कॉल्ड कैश फ्लो इन्वेस्टर्स. प्रोफेशनल इन्वेस्टर्स लाइक मी, आई डोंट वांट कैश फ्लो, राइट? आई एम नॉट एट दैट स्टेज ऑफ लाइफ. सो यू टेल मी आई गिव यू 2 lakhs a year, आई से बॉस मैं क्या करूंगा इसका? मेरे को 2 लाख नहीं चाहिए. आई वांट दैट 20-30 lakhs टू क्रिएट वैल्यू. I'm not looking at profit. So if you submit a plan to me which says you give me 20 lakhs and I'll make profit for you and I'll return 2 lakhs a year or 1 lakh a year, I'm not interested. I'm not putting 20 lakhs or 30 lakhs or 40 lakhs in you to make 2 lakhs a year. उससे अच्छा तो मैं इंश्योरेंस के शेयर्स खरीद लूँगा, ठीक है ना? तो the issue is, now this is the way I think. Now the issue is when you are going to raise this money 20, 30, 40, 50, जो दूसरे वाला जो बंदा से आपको जो जिसको पिच कर रहे हो ना, उसका प्रोफाइल समझो, उसको चाहिए क्या. अगर उसको कैश फ्लो चाहिए तो उसको कैश फ्लो प्रेजेंट करो कि बॉस मैं आप 20 लाख रुपए दो, मैं ये प्रॉफिट बनाऊंगा, मैं आप 10% ले लेना उसका, राइट. और अगर प्रोफेशनल इन्वेस्टर है तो फिर उसको आप वैल्यू दिखाओ कि बॉस ये 20 लाख से हम ये वैल्यू पे ले जाएंगे, फिर हम 2 करोड़ रेस करेंगे, बिकॉज वो जो जहाँ पे गोल पे पहुंचना है वो 20 लाख पे तो पहुंच नहीं पाएंगे. दैट्स ऑब्वियस.
रियलिस्टिक वैल्यू दिखाओ कि हवा
सर
दिखाओ.
नहीं रियलिस्टिक वैल्यू
वही तो मैं पहला बोला ना.
Okay guys, thanks a lot. Thanks to the panel. Hitesh invests in QSRs. Amit does a lot of work with B2B food companies. Bloom is a very prolific investor. They even invested in a FMCG brand called Mississippi recently. Gautam writes a check on a paper plan, and I don't do food anymore. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. A lot which we have learned from this panel. I would really like to thank everybody coming over here, spending time. Really a great insight to everybody. Thanks a lot. We will be breaking over here for